Hey everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your art Sherpa, and today we're on quest number 6, good to go about gesso. So I'm really excited to share this quest with you today. If you've come for the live show, I'm so excited to have you here because we're going to be able to answer some questions. And if you're here on the replay, this is going to be a lot of information about the product known as gesso. Today on the other mic is my husband, John, who is the Sherpa tracker. He's going to be following me around on the different cameras so you can be like right up in the action of what I'm doing. So you're not missing anything, which is something I like. He also reads the comments. And if you guys have a question, he can catch that question and ask me. So that's really fabulous. Even if you're on the replay, somebody might have asked a question that you were going to ask. So be sure and definitely stay tuned because you might get something you've really been wondering about answered. How you guys doing today?
Oh my gosh, we have a full house out here, and it is
We do?
great. Everyone's just chatting. It's really great to see everybody. We got all of our wonderful moderators and the Sherpettes and all of our great community. So it's wonderful.
I have to say I'm super grateful for being able to have moderators on YouTube, especially on these live events. It's maybe, I think, one of their best features that they ever created, and I love that we get to use it here, and I love the heart and integrity of every one of our moderators who comes and makes sure that we have a happy, safe place to be creative in. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too. Gosh, so grateful for all of you guys. So
yeah. So
what do we do today?
We're going to talk about blank canvases. So there's a thing they talk about that artists are emotionally resilient. I don't know if that's true, but they say that about us. And part of that is that every day is kind of a blank canvas, right? Every next painting, it's a blank canvas. We always have this perpetually renewing chance to start over. Another thing, though, that happens to artists is like as we paint along, there's an example of this thing behind me. You're just going along. It's not working out. It's a mistake. It's not resolving. Happens in art. Happens for me, I like to say, about every 10 or so paintings. I do something, and it's not great. And that's okay, because the 11th painting, the 12th painting is going to be wonderful, and I know that, and I know how to work through that. So today we're going to talk about how to prepare a surface to paint, or how to recover something that we painted that we don't love and we're ready to recycle, upcycle, and start anew. Both in the physical space of our canvas and kind of internally, emotionally. And I think for today, that's a really great subject for all of us to get into. We're going to be talking about gesso. Gesso, and this is in the description. If you want more gesso information, I packed the description. Packed it, not just with the quest and the mini quest, which you can also do, but with more information on gesso. I've got some Liquitex professional gesso right here. Gesso is basically chalk, pigment, and a polymer. Right? That's what this is. This is gesso for acrylic. I also have the more economical Liquitex Basics gesso. We'll talk about the differences between the Pro and the Basic. I have the tinted gesso. Most people can get the black colored gesso from the store. So this is the pre-made black gesso by Liquitex. And this is the clear gesso.
Right.
Today I'm a little brand heavy, I'm noticing.
That's okay. It's a good brand.
It's a good brand. It's just what I use. It's not any specific thinking behind that. It's just when I grab gesso, I think I just grab Liquitex is what happens.
That comes from it works.
It comes from that it works. So the first thing we can talk about is the history of gesso. So gesso initially was created to prepare surfaces for paint, for oil painting. And actually the formulation used to be different. And there is a lot of stuff coming out now that gesso for acrylic painting is actually not good for oils. So oil people, there's a whole bunch of information for this out there for you. Lots of videos. I'm sure there's just everything you need, but we're going to really be focusing on gesso for acrylic paintings. But this is all types of acrylic. This is acrylic opens. This is fluids. This is every single type of acrylic product out there from craft to pro paint. This does cover that entire umbrella. Basically, you're going to be the first thing you'll be thinking about in gesso is cost, right?
Yeah.
So you've got pro and basic. And guess what? Exactly like the paint. The difference is exactly like the paint. This is slightly thinner on the pigment and the ingredients that make it beautiful, creamy, and opaque. So you have to do a lot more coats, right? Now, on our canvases from Michaels that we get in the 5-pack, which many of you have written me about and said, it's like the paint won't stick. That's because they pre-gesso it, but then they seal it with plastic, like this weird spray sealant that paint doesn't stick to.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Gesso's a great solution for that, and I would just get the Artist Loft or Basic Gesso for those. If I'm just like, I bought these economy canvases and I just need to coat them so my paint will stick, you really don't need to get the most expensive gesso in the store by any means. You know, if you're just painting for recreation or hobby and it's just for fun and you're not exhibiting, showing, or selling, guess what? The Basics and Artist Loft will coat your canvas just fine. Your paint will stick. And at the end of the day, you're just trying to get your paint to stick to the surface that you're painting or the ground. In art, we like to call it the ground. You paint on the ground. But really what we're just saying is whatever surface, whether it's a board, whether it's linen, you know. Now, with acrylic paint, we've talked a lot that you can't just like thin paint and throw it up because it can underbind. But something you might not know is if you don't prepare a canvas, if you have a raw canvas, then you can actually do stains. So you don't actually have to gesso your canvas.
Interesting.
That's something a lot of people don't know. You don't actually have to. But it does give you a reliable surface. If you were to say take this Liquitex Professional white gesso, apply it on a beautiful linen canvas, sand it with the high grit paper, more information about those grits in the description, and then regesso and sand and regesso, you create what's called a portrait ground. And a portrait ground is just a very smooth, glassy surface that your paint can glide over.
Yeah.
See, because gesso is actually created to make toothy tooth for your paint to stick to. And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed when your canvas has no tooth, the paint doesn't stick, which comes to why don't we just paint the canvas white? I got white paint. Why don't I just paint it white?
Because you need that tooth, huh?
Because you want that tooth. That's the only reason why you can paint the canvas white. It's a little more expensive, and it's sealing the canvas, and you have less tooth. So it changes how your brush disperses paint onto the canvas. That's all it is.
Interesting.
It's not like some horrible sin, not some crazy thing that you've done wrong. It's not that big of a deal. It's just more expensive to use white paint, and it doesn't give you a tooth. Now, products after that are the tinted gessos. This is the black gesso. You've seen the black gessoed canvases, right? But after you've seen them also sealing them, you might be like, I just take my own canvas and tint it, thank you. This isn't that expensive, and this might be way in your budget to do. And again, I think I've seen tints in the student grade.
So there's a question about sanding gesso. So if you sand the gesso, don't you get rid of all the tooth that you just put on there?
No, actually.
Yeah, and that's because the material itself is chalky, right?
Because the material itself is chalky, and you're using a fine grit sandpaper.
Yeah.
So you're reducing the tooth. It's the difference between like a cold press paper and a hot press paper. And also the chalk is a little bit absorbent.
Gotcha. Yeah,
so that's kind of what's going on there.
So the material itself provides the tooth, and then you're just using it as a fill to fill in the gaps of the canvas itself.
And you're just smoothing the surface so that it isn't an obvious.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's there. So the thing about tinted gesso is you can make it yourself, and you can tint in any color, which means you can make an acrylic ground with gesso. Yes, you can. So I could take my white gesso and tint it with, say, yellow ochre and paint my canvas. I would have the tooth, I would have the prepared surface, and I would have an acrylic ground that was going to be really reliable for my paint. So one giant tub, and you can buy this in like massive, massive, massive tubs.
Yes, like the ones over behind over there.
Yeah. You can then tint for paintings and go buy and buy. And it's very like neutral, and you know, I wouldn't eat it, but it's pretty non-toxic, so you don't have to worry about fumes and stuff like this.
Yeah. No, someone was asking about fumes earlier on, and I had suggested checking brand by brand in chat.
Yeah.
But do you find that some of these have less smell than others, or like brand to
Some
brand?
of them will have less smell than others. The gesso, because of its nature, shouldn't be bad chemically, and I would really question if I popped a tub and got lightheaded.
Yeah.
Be like, what is going on here? It's not like a varnish or a sealant. I get where those can get a little off the reservation, but gesso should be simple. The last gesso is the clear gesso.
clear gesso, huh?
Yeah. So this is really relevant to multimedia artists and mixed media artists. And a lot of art journalers really like it because what it does is it creates a surface you can kind of see through what's happening underneath, but it gives you a tooth that you can apply chalk pastel to or colored pencil and paint. Kind of an interesting thing, isn't it?
Well,
and I have an example of the kind of coating you'd expect to get. So I have this black feather here,
yeah.
right, that I could paint, and I applied a clear gesso to it.
Tilt the tip backwards.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. Yeah, you see it.
So it's not perfectly clear, is it? But you can see the black underneath.
Yeah.
And I have a nice surface, and I could really easily get like chalk pastels and stuff like that. And the next thing that I want to say about gesso is, all of this being true, guess what? You can make it.
Well, that's what PT was just asking about. She said that there's a whole lot of recipes out there for it.
Yeah.
Is it worth making?
For me, it never has been. But that being said, that's my style, that's my personality. And I know artists that absolutely will not use gesso they don't make. They want to make it.
Yeah.
And it is who they are. And I think as a creative person, you've just kind of be like, hey, am I the kind of person that likes to brew my own beer?
Yeah.
And do I like to make and fabricate everything myself? I'm just a born maker. Well, you might want to go out there and utilize all the fantastic ground recipes that are out and test them against each other and have a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
It's like we can all buy soap at the store. Soap at the store is great. I can give you reviews of soap at the store, but there's going to be some people that's like, no, I got to make some cold processed soap at home with lavender.
So
that's really what it is.
Now, on these homemade ones and these, the boutique brands of all of these, these are all going to have different levels and nature of archivalness, right?
Yeah.
Because we aren't going to even know that unless you go by.
If it's a pro national brand, it's going to be archival. If it's a weird off brand, I got no guarantees for you.
So that's,
and if you make it yourself, you only have the guarantee of how you make it.
Right. So but that is something to keep in consideration. So that you can make archival, good quality gesso at home.
You can make gesso at home just as good as anything you buy in the store. And you can make it with really common ingredients. And there's a bunch of YouTubers that have great videos about how to make your grounds, how to make your gels, and how to make your gessos.
But the only thing we have to be concerned about is the quality control.
Yeah, in your time, in your life, in your creativity as an artist. The cost, it's like paint. I can make paint. You can make paint. Everybody can make paint. There's a lot of work in costs.
Yeah. I'll be back.
Ooh, toddler emergency. So that's just something to think about is like, what's my cost? Is the juice worth the squeeze, right? If just the making it is your pure joy, I recommend you go out, source the materials, and have fun and experiment with recipes. If you're like, look, I just want to sit down and paint, and I want this canvas to take the paint, and I don't want to have any trouble, you're probably going to be the happiest picking up a store-bought brand, would be my recommendation. So it's just really everything in art. If people are coming at you with really super hard and fast rules instead of strong recommendations, it's finding that balance. Are they coming at you like, this is art, and this is how we do it, and you have to use this way? You can give a strong recommendation that something is predictable and affordable, right? But there's always a way to break a rule. Like there's a very hard rule about whether you can paint oil paint and acrylic in the order you can do that in, but there are artists who figured out how to break that rule. So you got to just sort of, as a creative person, be like, what am I like? What's my style? And then you find your style, your creative style, and you embrace that, and that becomes part of your whole story. So like the artists that source their linen, prepare their gessos, create their painting, make the paint, that becomes part of their artist story. That becomes actually part of the finished piece that they create. Yeah. And I, as a collector, might really engage in that whole thing and be like, every single part of this was made by the artist. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be like super excited if somebody were to drop a Lawson in my lap. If anybody wants to drop a Lawson in my lap, that's cool. I will be very happy with that, right? So, all of the journeys are valid.
And if you have a Broncusi, you can send it my way.
And this is something like, if I could have for you guys, is to recognize that all of the journeys are valid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And these rules are really always guidelines. You know, except for don't eat paint. Don't eat paint. Oh, but there's that guy. There's an artist. I was like so on this don't eat paint kick. And there's an artist who eats paint and then squirts it out as tear duct at the canvas.
Yeah, that's...
I'm just saying. There's just
Don't
no
eat
rule.
paint.
And there's the one that throws up the paint at the canvas.
Don't eat paint.
I'm just saying it's out there.
Don't eat paint.
Don't eat paint. So one of the other things that we talk about when we're talking about gesso is, are you preparing a blank canvas? Like, I got my canvas at Michael's and it was economic and I feel like they sealed it with plastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I covering up, a painted on surface? And if I'm covering up a blank surface from a factory, or a pretty like normal canvas, all I have to do is 2 coats of gesso. I'm going to give a demo with my inexpensive gesso on my acrylic paper here. Right, so I'm going to just put out my gesso. One of the things that they like in gesso is, just making sure I am putting out gesso. I'm going to use my big flat. Here, can you?
Yeah, sure.
You got the hiccup.
So there's
using
a
a bigger brush.
Oh, there's a quick question there as you were coming in.
And I am moistening my brush, if you're wondering if I am.
If you need to hiccup, you can just tell me. I'll mute you and you can hiccup. But,
so thin coats. Just a thin coat. Not thick. This is a lot like...
oh, the color's so off there on that one.
Yeah, I know. You're not even going to see it, right? Right, thin coat. I could switch it to the black so we could see it.
Oh, no. I mean, like, on the close-up camera,
I'm just going to do this upper third in this.
Yeah, I had tried to adjust that close-up camera with to see the difference, but it ended up making it too yellow. So
yeah, it just listen, guys. I can still see the original tooth of this here.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to switch to the black so you guys can see there isn't a big, huge difference there. Other than it's black.
Yeah.
But I could have tinted it. And so another conversation is, can I paint with gesso? I get that question a lot. Can I use gesso as a paint? Can I use it instead of white?
Yeah.
So you're going to run into artists who will completely flip their lid and be like, no, never, not at all. It's not okay. And other artists who swear by it as a ground. Oil artists love to use it in their wet on wet techniques, but it's not really the same for acrylic artists. Now, here's what I'll say on using gesso. Gesso, like any art medium, has qualities.
Mm-hmm.
Predictable qualities. So we know gesso is chalky. We know gesso is kind of thin and self-leveling. That's a term in paint when they're saying there's not a lot of polymer body to the paint, and that as it dries, the brush strokes and everything are going to smooth out. Right? So it's self-leveling and chalky. Now, all that would mean is that it's a little hard to rinse out of your brushes too, guys. Just, that's the other thing. It really gets in your brushes. So when you're painting with it, you'll find that it's really in your brushes. I'm going to use this black right here. And you can kind of see it go on.
There
It just looks like black paint, guys.
No.
I wouldn't use a lot of water in your gesso, but you can thin it to improve flow. And you can put it just straight on. Both are acceptable. I'm just letting it blend even into the gray that's up here.
So Kristen was asking, if she had painted when she had painted her pears, it would have flowed better if she had gessoed over her board to begin with?
It may have. It depends on her surface. Right? A lot of times, like if you had a masonite board, right, that was pre-coated, you might not have needed a coat of gesso. But if you had a board that you purchased that was maybe economic and they were cutting costs on the finish, yeah, it might have helped. What I'll generally say is, look at your experience. If you're struggling to coat a painting, like you're just like, I can't even coat this to get by at all. If it's just hard to even do anything, start looking at your paint, your brushes, and your surface first. You guys all look at yourselves first, right? You're like, what's wrong with me? I'm painting and nothing's happening. But if you're painting and paint is just not covering the canvas in a reasonable, easy way, check your brush. Is your brush too soft?
Yeah.
Right? Check your paint. Is your paint dried out? Is it glumpy? Did you not have enough fluid or flow into it? Do you need to thin it with water a little bit? Is your temperature hot? You know, we don't take into account how affected by temperature acrylic paint is. So if you live in a hot, dry area, your painting experience is not the same as somebody that lives in a cool, moist area. Right? So somebody can be like, hey, I love retarders and slow dries. They really help me. Look at where they live. Because you may not get the same effect in Australia in the arid desert regions.
True.
I know I don't in Houston, which is hot and muggy. Right? I haven't found a product that I'm like, woo, everywhere I paint, I feel like it's just the best solution I've ever had.
Huh.
And so that's true of every acrylic product. It is somewhat affected by temperature. Bakers get this, right? Like when you're up high in altitude, does your cake bake the same?
Nope.
No. Acrylic paint's the same way.
That's pretty cool.
It is. I'm just rinsing this out so I can show a tint or tone.
Now, when you're using a brush, do you use a specific gesso brush or any brush?
Okay. You can use any brush. Some people really like to have a gesso brush. You can put gesso. I've seen people put it on with those little sponge brushes. I've seen people put it on with so much different stuff. What I'll say is be sure you wash it out because it's, you know, it's got the polymer, it's got the chalk. You need to clean it out. It's the same care instructions. The bigger your brush, the bigger, wider brush that you put on, the easier it is to get a thin, even coat.
Now,
I'm going to just add some tint. See how I've just tinted this gesso?
yeah.
So that's how easy it is to tint. I didn't need to go buy a custom tint.
Now, if you bought a black pre-gessoed canvas, do you need to repaint over all of that, or can the black be the basic ground?
On Frederick's canvases, good quality canvases, you guys do not need to re-gesso in general.
Okay.
On economic discount canvases, I would re-gesso. If you can afford to. Listen, if you can't, the surface is sealed, your painting is archival, and you're okay, right? But if you have it in your budget to just grab a tub of any gesso and recoat those discount canvases, you'll find that your painting experience is more predictable. But listen, sometimes you guys get the gesso on and you're like, it's soaking up all my paint because it's chalky. It'll do that. It pulls the paint into the ground. It stabilizes the adhesion.
Yeah.
That's what it's doing, right? And that's why it's, you know, I mean, when you see someone painting with gesso, what are they doing? They're doing a tinted ground, right, with their gesso. And I have seen artists that do amazing work in gesso. So you're just kind of like, can I predict my result? That's really, as an artist, all you're ever really saying to yourself is, can I predict my result? And do I have control over the result I'm getting? And it is the result that I want.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I think Stacy is. This is while you're going through here, I want to make sure I get a little clarity because Stacy is wanting to make sure that she understands.
I'm here to help explain gesso. We're gonna stay here till we got it down.
So when it comes to when it comes to black gesso and black paint, why can't she just paint the canvas black, and why would she want to use black gesso?
Okay, for the same reason you use white gesso instead of white paint. The black gesso has the chalk and the ground and the tooth in it, and the white paint will seal the canvas, and the black paint will seal the canvas and alter the tooth or the way that your paint paints on it or sticks. But listen, sometimes that's what you want. You know, it's like the gesso is going to cost you less money, right? The gesso is going to give you a surface that's reliable and predictable. That's its benefit.
All right.
It is not necessarily intrinsically required, though sometimes preparing a surface or ground is required. One of the things people don't know is the boards for painting, right? Those are not all good quality. and a lot of them have chemicals that leach up through the wood, through the surface prep, into your painting and discolor it.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. Because
Yeah.
what they bond a lot of those boards together with, the glues and things.
So there's a whole prep you actually need to do. Here you are paying crazy money for a board. It might possibly seep on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. The other time you worry about prep is when you're painting over a surface that you pre-painted or maybe done a multimedia piece on. There's a whole prep, and we're going to talk about how you would do that. So say I've got a canvas that's got a lot. This was easy, right? This was an easy thing. Say I've got a canvas that has a painting on it. When I was trying to do the cow, like I told you, I did studies. This was one of my studies, and he was not working out, and I could see that. I was like, I can work this cow out, but I can't show anyone else how to work this cow out.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when I'm creating lessons for you guys, I will have that experience with a painting I'm designing where I'm like, I can paint it, but I don't know if I can explain to anyone else how I painted it.
Uh-huh.
Right? And so I'll have to start over. And this was one of these things. So you'll notice here I've got some collaging going on and some texture and a bunch of stuff happening. I've got some high pigments, right? I could, if I were a multimedia artist, have like all kinds of inks and unusual media in here. Mm-hmm. Now, and this is in the description, and I hate the name for it. It's called SID, Structurally Induced Discoloration. Don't like the name. I like to just call it leakage or seepage or any other thing. But basically what it means is stuff shows through. And stuff can show through into your paint. Think about it. They know to x-ray the paintings in the museum because something's starting to show through.
Interesting.
That's when they were like, dude, we need to x-ray all these. Do these things have paintings underneath them?
Yeah.
That's what it is. Because the people who go get the degree in conservation, in art conservation, those people are on another level. Those people are like, seriously, like when you sit and talk with somebody whose job it is to preserve artwork, they're crazy knowledgeable. I have been blessed enough to do that a few times in my life, and I have always walked away in awe of the understanding of the process and how all these different paints, medias, their history, everything. It's crazy. So a lot of these practices come from them, like companies like Gold and Liquitex. They work with people who work in the museums that are preparing and saving and restoring paintings and going, how could we prevent this problem in the future?
Yeah.
How can we prevent an artist who's working today from being dead and generations away someone's in a museum going, do you see that weird thing showing through? Is that supposed to be there?
Right.
That's what that's about. So the ideal archival situation, if you're painting on an unknown surface or over a surface, and if you were going to, say, resell it, this isn't for your hobby.
Yeah.
This is you're going to go out and commercially sell it. You need to create an isolation coat. We talked about it a little bit in my varnish video.
Oh, yeah.
And GAC 100 is probably the product on the market everybody likes to use. I can't use GAC. I have a reaction to some of the chemicals in some of the golden products. That's me. I'm not saying they're intrinsically that way. John knows I have a reaction to certain propellants and stuff like that.
I do just fine with them.
He's fine. I'm not. I get all crazy. But I can use gel medium and varnish.
Yep.
So I might use a coat of gel medium and varnish over if I was like, I'm in this junk pile and I found this cool thing and I want to paint on this cool thing, I'm definitely hitting it with a coat of varnish. Right? Like weird refrigerator door, I'm hitting it with a coat of varnish. Mm-hmm. Just to make sure the rust and everything isn't coming through affecting my paint. Especially if I was going to sell it to somebody. But if I'm like at home and I'm maybe not going to resell and I don't really care, I might just do 2 coats of gesso. So here's what I'm going to say. The correct methodology is to hit this with an isolation coat because you painted on it and you don't want it to soak through. But I know everything on here is a pro paint. I know everything on here is stabilized, right? And you may know that. You may know, like, I know where my paint came from. There was no paint that slipped in on me. There were no markers. There was nothing that will surprise me. Then you can simply, I'm going to use the Pro Coat here because it is more effective. And you can kind of see how it's different. Wait, watch this. All right, see this beautiful creamy?
Yep.
I can't even get this out. Same company. Not the same product, is it? Look at that lumpy
No.
bumpy, and there's that.
Huh.
Just saying. I'm just going to take out this brush. Look, I don't even have to thin this with water, do I?
Oh,
Other one I had to thin with water. And I'm going to just paint over my surface. Because I feel okay.
Bye, cow.
Bye, cow. I feel okay about... This is one of our requests. Gesso over something that needs gessoing. If you have something in your house that you're like, it just bugs me to look at it. I don't know what I was thinking. You can gesso over it.
Yep.
You can start fresh.
Now,
As artists, I don't have to sit there and look at this cow and be annoyed at it to the end of time. It can become something new. And you're going to see that the texture from the paint I used is here. Still.
Now, the two paints, the two gessos you put out there, the creamy one is which one?
This one right here is the professional Liquitex gesso.
Yeah.
This is the basics.
Ah.
I had to thin the basics with water to get it to spread nicely on the canvas.
There were lots of people who felt like you could have painted over some other canvas.
I know. I knew that was coming. Here's the other thing you'll learn as an artist. You'll do a painting, you're over it, you're not happy with it anymore. You're ready to let it go, and your friend's like, no, but I love that one. And you're like, look, I can't even let you take it home and hang it at your house because every time I'm at your house, I'm going to be annoyed. I'd have to stop visiting you if you take this painting. I don't know if you've ever... I've literally had that... I've had that thing.
I've been there when you've had that argument with people. You're
I've
like,
been
no,
there. I'm like, no, it
leave
has
it
to go.
in the trash.
It's got to go in the trash. So I've got this nice coat on here, right? It's a little flicky. I'm getting a little bit of gesso. It reminds me a little bit of Kills.
You get paint on everything.
I do. I get paint on everything. So what I would do is I would dry that, and you can't necessarily see it there, but maybe you can see it. Can they see? Up there, you can see the cow still. See how one coat is not enough.
There's still some meta-cow.
There's still some meta-cow. So this is going to be a 2 to 3 coat process
Yep.
to reclaim this canvas. Now on a board, right? Really? Doesn't really matter. But, you know, because I might have gotten the board for like 50 cents. But if I had bought a Frederick's canvas and I had thought I had a great idea and I got into that painting and it was not a good idea and I had spent all that money on a good Frederick's, I'm going to gesso that thing over.
Yeah.
I'm going to put an isolation coat down. I'm going to recover my whole canvas. It's coming back. I paid a lot of money for that. It's coming back.
Now, before you gesso, could you sand it to get rid of some of the texture from the other paint layer?
Well, we can't because we use cadmium.
Gotcha.
You cannot sand your painting if you paint with true cadmium.
Or you should not. Because you could do it, but it's not a good idea.
It could cause cancer.
It's cancerous.
So
for
please
sure.
don't.
Don't do that. But
Right?
it's like
There has not been a good conductive long study, but what they're sure of is if you eat or breathe cadmium, it's not good for you.
okay, so it's okay to sand gesso, not so good to sand cadmium paint.
Yeah, you can sand gesso till because it's just chalk.
Yeah.
They're pretty sure chalk is not going to kill you quickly enough for you to notice.
But they're concerned about the cadmium in the cadmium paint.
Any of the cadmium paints.
Right.
And you really want to check every single tube of paint because most of them will be like, this is poison.
So, yeah. So
Lots of paint are historically not good for you to eat. A lot of the best paints in the world you would never, ever, ever, ever want to put on the inside of your body.
yeah.
So,
Well,
don't eat paint.
Yeah. And if you're in California, they want you to put on a hazmat suit when you're dealing with anything that is remotely.
There is a whole thing on cadmiums about like paint water and stuff like that. Again, there's studies being done right now in Europe, and there's studies being done in the United States, and it's not looking like cadmium paint is the same as say cadmium in the batteries for the environment for those things, but the jury's still out on it. So what I do on the cadmium issue is, right, since there's nothing conclusive,
Yeah.
I stay observant and I just sort of Google it every once in a while to see if what is thought to be true now changes.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that doctors were telling us to smoke cigarettes
Yeah.
and that eggs were certain death.
But we're
So update.
and we're definitely in the camp of don't eat paint.
Don't eat paint.
Don't breathe paint.
And someday we might come forward and be in a camp of don't paint with cadmium.
Maybe.
Maybe.
But right now, all signs say it's okay.
All signs say it's okay.
Just be safe.
Today.
Yeah.
Don't breathe cadmium.
Yeah.
Don't drink cadmium.
Yeah.
Don't. Yeah. And what's our solution? All the paint lines have a hue.
Yeah. They do.
They do. They have a hue. Go quinacridone. Right. Go some other great vibrant color.
Right.
I have this weird thing where I grew up with cadmiums. All the artists I have, they do. It is a red that is unique. It's an orange and a yellow that is unique to that product.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
That's good to know. So we're letting this thing.
I'm sorry I got us onto that. But they were.
No, that's a good thing to know. I'm glad that everybody here today that gets this point of the video knows not to sand cadmium. Don't put it in your airbrush. Don't do it. That's great information to have as an artist.
So yeah, it's okay to sand your regular paints and your hues and all that stuff. Just avoid sanding the cads. That's what we've read.
You should always use a respirator for sanding anything like that. You should just, safety tip.
If you're in California, get yourself a hazmat suit.
Yes.
And then you can paint.
Notify your neighbors. Get a permit.
Tent your house.
No feelings on it at all. But
we don't mind.
Yeah. You know, whatever safety regulations are required. You have different regulations if you're at a university.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
You know, just again, as an artist, you're still yourself, right? You're not some different alternative person. You're yourself. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a person and you've got like 3 bags of recycling, right? Yeah. And you're really sorting and you go over to your neighbor's house and then you sort their garbage. We all have that neighbor. Right?
We've all had that neighbor.
Yeah, we don't currently, but we've all had that neighbor. Listen, if you're that person, don't feel bad about it. Just be like, I have to make these particular decisions so I feel good in my painting practice. Don't apologize for it. Just do it. Mm-hmm. Right? This is your painting practice. This is your painting space. Now, please don't go into the street and yell at your neighbor who's not in the same space you are. Mm-hmm. Right? I guess that's the balance, right? Is where we say, hey, this isn't right for me. This other thing is right for me. But that doesn't mean you got to go yell at somebody else because they're not doing it your way. You just got to be reflective and like, how do I need to paint this? What steps do I need to take? What is okay for me? Right? And just be really truthful and honest with yourself about that and unapologetic, but no need to run amok and then attack everybody else about it either. So balance in all things, right? Mm-hmm. Balance in all things.
Yeah, definitely.
So these are these different products.
We've covered a little few of them.
All right, the quest.
The quest
that we like to talk about. So the first quest.
Huh? Wait, before we go, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Because we didn't cover burlap and gesso.
Burlap and gesso.
So, because they were asking about preparing burlap canvases.
Okay. So, if the burlap does not have a coat of clear gesso, you want to apply a coat of clear gesso to the back, and then the front of it you apply, if you're trying to get that look I had for the Secret Garden, you just kind of apply that uneven coat of gesso. If you really, really, really want to replicate the Hobby Lobby canvas where they've got that's actually plaster of Paris and then gesso.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
But the gesso looks really good, so.
Now, let's see here. What
There's no art. Well, there is art police, but just don't let them in your house. Don't let the art police in your house. Don't do it.
You're okay with the clear gesso? You used that before and you're happy with it?
Yeah, I'm real happy with it. I am. I wouldn't clear gesso over this cow if I was, to then paint over a whole new painting. But like, say I wanted to add some pastel work over here, I might use clear gesso over here or an acrylic ground or some other medium that we're going to be talking about later in the quest to create a surface that would take my pastel. Because multimedia art is very cool.
Yeah.
There's a whole multimedia fine art thing, and there's all these products. What's really interesting to me is to see, here's a thought I have on crafting versus the fine art kind of thing. The big tub of gesso is like the little tub of gesso over in the crafting section. So all I'm going to say is if you're doing journaling, you're doing something, this big thing of clear gesso by Liquitex, which is pretty economical. I've seen some little tiny boutique tins for $8.
Yeah.
And I would say do this and then get a really good Copic marker or something.
Huh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like in that sort of balancing budget stuff, unless you really like the packaging.
Yeah.
That's my feeling on that.
So we had a question about is there any lead in acrylic paint? And I would have to say that as far as I know, there's been a in the United States there is a process where they're not allowed to have lead in things, and it's actually a mandate that's been in place for a long time.
But I don't know globally.
Yeah, not globally. You'll have to check that out. But in the United States, they're not allowed to use.
There's
lead
probably
in paint.
historic paint that requires lead for construction. And I don't know if it can be sold in the U.S. The only brand I could even think might possibly do that would be Michael Harding, and that's because he recreates by hand historic paint formulations. But I don't remember seeing a tube in it that says contains lead.
Yeah, and you should check manufacturer by manufacturer, but I don't believe that any of the major U.S. manufacturers.
Yeah, here's the thing: all of these bottles, especially by the big companies, have a just ton of info. Right? All those little fuzzy words that you can't read, that you can't see. There it is. Look at that.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
There's a bunch. All of this information, like these dots. How fluid is it? Well, this is very fluid. What's the preparation? Right? This is a preparation, not a finish. This is a preparation, not a finish. If it was a finish, the dot would be over here. If this was a thick paint, the dot would be over here. If it were gloss, the dot would be over there, but it's over here because it's a matte. And is it transparent? Dude, it's not even a little transparent. The dot is buried on the other side. So you'll look at these bars and you read this stuff if you can read it, right? And it'll tell you, seals, stiffens, and provides surface tooth for painting surfaces. Permanent, non-yellowing, flexible, and water-resistant when dry. For acrylic, oil pastels, and other paint media, I'm going to say to you, oil guys, don't use it. That's my 2 cents. I'm not a paint chemist. This is just the thinking on all the paint boards. I'm seeing more and more and more and more blogs and thinking among the artists that you need a special surface for oils.
Yeah.
Apply to raw canvas, hardboard, paper, wood, and other non-oily porous surfaces. That's a lot of options. Sand hard, shiny surfaces before applying. In other words, they're saying you can put this on glass, sand it first.
I wonder if it'll attach to steel. That's
Allow 24 hours minimum drying before use.
Yeah. It's got to cure.
It has to cure. Do not mix with oils, and you can tint with acrylic color.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of information. And it tells you in a couple languages where they sell this product, right?
Yeah.
And, you can, here's the thing, but on this one, so you saw on the other one where the fluid dot was way over here, this one is not as fluid. It's in the middle. It's not a finished product. It's not thick, but it's still very matte and it's still very opaque. So where they save money was in this dot. If you look at the fine products and the dot's all buried on one side, and then you look on the student products and it's in the middle, you know exactly where they save their money.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. It's interesting to sit and read paint. The information on it is fascinating because they'll tell you a lot of stuff on the tube. And then if you need to know more stuff, they'll tell you on the website. If you work with a company that's been around, whether it's Dollar and Rally or it's Liquitex or it's Golden or it's Deco Arts. Like I just talked with Deco Arts. They have a specialist that will talk to you on the phone. Right? If Deco Arts has a surface preparation and you want to use it some way, guess what? You can literally go to their website, call a person, and get an answer. You can go to Liquitex and get an answer. You can go to Golden and get an answer. So even if you're like, listen, I've got this weird idea I have, go ahead and ask the company. They have people whose job is literally to know everything there is to know about the product and answer your crazy questions. It's the coolest thing ever. And the big companies all have one. Oh, here's a cool thing. Say you're painting with something from not a big company, you can still write the big company question. Right? They don't know. They don't have a report. They don't have your receipt. So, and I found no matter who the company is, if they've been in business a while, they got a website, they got a YouTube channel, probably they're going to respond to what you have to ask. I know this is really long for Gesso, but I can't just stress that enough to work with a company that's been in business.
Yeah.
Because they care. They have to care. You'd think they'd have to care. They have to care about you because, you're their customer. They don't want you hop into another company. They're going to do their best.
Yeah.
And that's what it's really about. And they're all really passionate, and they're all pretty competitive with each other, right? Because they're all like they're like sports teams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they really are. Like Team Liquitex is like rah rah Liquitex. Why we're the best in the world. You know, Golden's cheer team just as ferocious, right? But guess what? So is Deco Arts.
Yeah.
Right? I wrote them asking them about if we could use Mod Podge as a sealer.
Oh yeah, that's right. You had a really nice conversation with them.
A very long one. Guess what? No. Not as a varnish. No.
Oh yeah.
No, because Mod Podge is sensitive to humidity. The same way acrylic paint is sensitive to heat and is affected by it, Mod Podge is sensitive to humidity, makes it an ideal varnish.
Huh.
But they make a product that is a good varnish. That's spray, called acrylic spray varnish.
Huh.
Works perfectly for it. Talk to me a long time about the products.
Well, cool. I which one? I am so appreciate that they took the time to talk to us and explain the difference, because we've had a lot of Mod Podge questions.
We've had a lot of Mod Podge questions. I even told him, I said, listen, if you see a Mod Podge question, Plaid has my permission to answer any directly. They do. I don't mind if a pro paint company comes here and says, this is our official statement. It's helpful to you, and it's helpful to me.
We may test it.
We may test it. Yeah, we might test that. We might test that product. I am willing to test those products and see how it's working for me.
No, I mean, like if you come in here and say like this is what our product does, I mean, chances are we're going to test it and see if it does that.
Mini Quest.
Yeah. Mini Quest. What is Mini
Quest? So we have our quest. Find a painting that you're hating. If you don't have one, you don't have to do this quest. These quests are always optional. I really like to remind you guys that there's no grade and there's no time. Some of you guys, I'm like, I'm really behind. Behind what?
Yeah,
there's no time. They're up forever. We're just kind of floating through. You know, they got that grade thing, time thing, and art school down. So we don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go do that, they got that. They give you a grade right on your art.
Huh.
Right?
I guess
they do.
You can go get one of those.
You get a grade. I got grades all the way through art school on my art.
That's true. You did. You can go do that.
Yeah. You can have that. We're not doing that.
No,
we're questing.
No, we get badges.
The hero gets there and saves the world when he gets there.
Yep.
That's how quest works. So whenever you get there is good. And they're always optional.
Yes.
Always. If you're like, ugh, I don't like it, it's okay.
So
you're not going to suddenly not be an artist because you didn't do a quest.
What's a quest?
Okay.
What's a quest?
Quest. First one is gesso over something you don't love.
Okay.
Right, which you can see is going to take a minute. You know, allow them to dry between coats, then do the 24-hour cure, and then you've got a painting surface you can paint over.
Mm.
The other mini quest is the idea that as artists, we start anew every canvas, right? This is just this consciousness that you take on as a creative person, right? And sometimes we have mistakes on canvases and we're very hard on ourselves for them, but guess what? There's always gesso. You don't need to be that upset about it. If it isn't going to work out and you can't emotionally align to the piece, you can gesso over it.
Mm-hmm.
Fresh, blank slate. And I like the idea that life is like that. You can have a terrible, terrible, terrible night, and the next day is a fresh canvas.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can be, you know, you can forgive yourself mistakes. You can forgive other people mistakes. You can really do a lot. And a wonderful thing I see artists do, it's like a cousin of the wish, is you write something you want to let go.
Mm-hmm.
That you maybe want to forgive. Maybe you need to forgive yourself, right?
Yeah.
You write it in, you gesso over it until it's gone, and then paint and painting over it.
That's a good thing to do.
Because it's a blank canvas.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's just one of those, that is literally, I've seen people, they write novels. They just write the words, I did, then, whole canvas just filled up, gessoed over, painted on. And there's this whole emotional weight behind the paint that's sealed in. I like to say, I have a saying, John's heard it, take it out of your heart and put it into your art.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got something bad happening in your heart, you know, don't leave it in there. You can take it out. You can put it on the canvas. You can write your upset words.
Yep.
You can gesso over it. You can paint an upset painting. And you gesso over that again.
Yeah.
And then paint a happy painting on top of it. You can literally take this outside of you and put it elsewhere and walk away from it.
Yes.
Resolved and healed and renewed. You only want to take the stuff in from your painting into your heart that makes you feel better. Take the bad stuff out and put it on the canvas.
Yep.
It's a little Dorian Gray.
Yeah. leave it at the canvas. Leave it on the canvas.
Leave it on the canvas. Let's all be a little Dorian Gray and put it in the canvas.
Yep.
Where it's not living inside of us. So we can be a blank slate every single day. I really love you guys. I appreciate you showing up today.
Yeah, can I say thank you? We have so many people who have joined us today. It's been fantastic. There's been a wonderful chat going on out here. Lots of puns. Lots of really great fun stuff happening. And I encourage you guys to come join us in the live chat in the future. It's so much fun for me specifically to be able to watch all you guys chat while we're talking and answer your questions. So
absolutely. It's a gift to see you, and we're going to see you this weekend. It is Angela Anderson and I are doing 2 paintings. We're doing reproductions of 2 famous paintings for Valentine's Day. We're going to show you some techniques. We're going to share some ideas with you on how to do that for your personal enjoyment. So come join us Saturday. It's starting on Angela Anderson's channel at noon. And it's going to go all day because my painting, you're going to be with me for a while. Bring a snack for my painting.
Snack?
Bring a snack. Zippy.
I mean,
even a 16 by 20, we're going to be here a minute.
Oh yeah?
It's not Marcello long, but it's going to be a minute. It's going to be like a lot of hoots. We're calling it a 3 hoot, but it's really a lot of hoots. But hey, there's traceable, so it's okay.
Traceable. Got it.
All right, we're going to see you Saturday. I want to see you at the easel really soon. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Love you guys. Bye-bye.